extremely grateful for the opportunity that we've had to work with the Norwegian Refugee Council, and over the last 6 months it's been an amazing opportunity to try and use permaculture to bring together a group of people who are otherwise not connected. We're told they're from 14 different tribes from South Sudan and Uganda, speaking 8 different languages, and we tried to connect the people to the permaculture vision of the potential for abundance, food security, livelihood security, largely drawing on local and natural resources as far as possible. We did a 2-week intensive training, firstly in New Malmsey, and then we followed this with 2 more periods of intensive training spread over 6 months, and in between we've got action and support groups. Permaculture training teams, 6 training teams have been going out into the field and working closely with the 40 TOTs, the trainers, the core group, and supporting them to reach out into their communities to spread the word. So we've kind of indirectly trained 200 people through this process. And over the course of the 6 months, the focus has been on about building a level of understanding using permaculture sort of concepts to create a common conceptual language, so that the participants themselves can formulate plans and strategies around developing food security and income security by really focusing primarily on what's there available to them already, without having to reach outside looking for money and resources and investment. So it's been a fascinating and really interesting process. We've really enjoyed meeting the people. The first few days it felt almost impossible. How can we reach these people that we have so little in common with, come from Central Africa, different language, different culture? It took 4 days, I reckon, of the first training before we connected and we realised that we were speaking a common language. And because permaculture is essentially drawn from observations, so once you can get people seeing and working in a particular way, then the potential barriers, cultural and language barriers, actually fall away. We've been primarily focused on teaching it through very practical approaches, but not exclusively. Permaculture is more than the sum of its parts. It's the thinking and strategy behind the practicals, if you like. That's the glue that holds it all together. So we've tried to work very hard to maintain a balance between the practicals and the theory, so that there's a deep understanding and an understanding in which people are able to actually communicate to the peers and the community around them what it is that they're doing. Working with natural processes, working with the resources that we actually have to hand, developing our understanding so that we can talk about these things in a way in which then these ideas can then be subsequently communicated and understood. Permaculture's focused on answering the question, how can we have the maximum impact for the minimum input? How can we kind of accelerate learning processes and behavioural changes without long-term significant inputs? And that's kind of been central to our approach. So what we're seeing here in these photos was taken from the whole sort of arc of the 6 months of the project, is strategies that we've put in place to try and connect people directly to the natural resources around them. The things that they can do and make, which significantly increase their own self-resilience, but are using local and natural resources which are essentially free. So if we're making charcoal briquettes from leftover residues, or we're using clay to make energy efficient stoves, using waste products to make compost, so on and so forth, is there's no barriers to stop people doing these things immediately, because they're drawing on resources that they have around them. The only thing that they're lacking, if you like, is the sense of sort of common strategy, which then coordinates actions together towards sort of set goals. So permaculture gives this rationale. It gives the ability to take seemingly random things and organise them into patterns and into processes that actually make sense within the mindset that we're using to help understand it. So we also structured the project through sort of 3 phases, which we've called demonstrate, educate and replicate. So rather than trying to sort of preach at people and tell people what to do, the idea from the outset was to show techniques which clearly work, which then generates an interest in the people to understand them better, to then equip the participants with the knowledge that they can then communicate to the people around them why they're doing what they're doing. And then the third stage is then to enable them to replicate this, to be able to put things in motion which enable them to promote these ideas, and these ideas to be able to take off and be copyable throughout the community. The permaculture design process, PDC, the permaculture design course, the education process, is a well-established, evolved curriculum. So we've kind of used that as a template, and we've taken, throughout the 6 months, we've taken the participants through this process, and there's a kind of a beginning, a middle and an end to it. It's a structured process, and at the end people can graduate, they get a certificate, they have a clear sense of accomplishment, and then have a clear set of sort of conceptual ideas which they can use to understand what they're doing, communicate that to other people, and enable other people to do the same for themselves. That's the idea. By addressing immediate needs, so fuel efficiency, smoke reduction, in cooking, and then secondly, what we call sort of the Zone 2 gardens, so sort of intensive vegetable growing close to the compound, where wastewater can be used and compost can be used, and where there's sort of a strong connection and interaction happening between the homestead and the garden that surrounds it. We've tried to go on from this link from personal development and empowerment, so the kind of change that happens on the inside, sort of the motivational change, that then leads to behavioural change, which then becomes manifest in the landscape around, and those changes then support and reinforce those actions that we've initiated. People are taking to it very readily. I've been really impressed. I've really enjoyed the process, and it's been really exciting to see actual tangible outputs coming from the education. Food security as expressed in stored and dried food. Many of the participants we've worked with have told us that they normally not eaten a lot of vegetables, not eaten a lot of greens. They've certainly not had surpluses to sell. They've been buying food rather than being able to produce it themselves. So you can see how a lot of these things are mutually reinforcing. Once people actually start along this pathway, those behaviours are reinforced because they very quickly, very rapidly get positive outcomes and positive feedback loops. So the permaculture vision extends well beyond just the sort of the home and the kitchen garden. The next sort of level, if you like, is bringing in perennial plants, thinking about how we can change the functions of the wider landscape as well. So whether it's looking at vetiver hedges to slow down surface water flows, to landscape adjustments to capture heavy rainfall and get that to infiltrate into the ground. It's about understanding, maybe reducing the amount of burning they do in the dry season, get people to value the carbon that's captured in dried grasses and so forth, that can be composted and that can add not just fertility to the soil and biological activity to the soil, but also increase the soil's ability to absorb and hold on to moisture, which is obviously essential. We've also seen in individuals start to form groups, start to form their own, to innovate and work with these ideas in their own way. And I think that's been a mark of the success, if you like, is that people haven't just blindly copied what we've told, what we've suggested they do, but what they've done is they've taken the ideas and they've adapted them to suit their own requirements. And I think that's the key of what we're trying to get to. We've developed the permaculture design process has created a sense of strategy for people to make the participants have realised that in growing food and needs organisation and planning and timing and strategy, and that this is something which they generally not aware of. People just more used to just sort of broadcasting seeds in general and into a sort of cleared landscape, rather than having nursery beds and shade beds and thinking about contours and water catchment and preparing seed beds and transplanting and having, what can we say, sort of mutual beneficial relationships between plants by planting things together in guilds, using legumes, using cover crops and so forth. One of the real strengths of the approach that we've taken is the mixture, the balance between the intensive training that they've had, the sort of theoretical training demonstrations, and then the actual outreach and support that's gone on with the action learning teams going out into the communities at regular intervals and helping move forward and reinforce the sort of initiatives they put in place. And a lot about the project has been sort of reinforcement of good outcomes, whether it's the acknowledgement through the certification and completing the training courses. And that really moved me to see how much that meant to people to receive that acknowledgement and to sort of to the sense of accomplishment and importance of being valued, especially as a displaced person. I can see how that could be enormously important. Also, over the arc of the 6 months, we've seen certain individuals really discover themselves, really find their voices as teachers or facilitators or sort of community leaders, translators. It's been really fascinating to see how, for example, the ideas that we've given to people have then been kind of incorporated, interpreted, and represented. Rather than just translating, we've seen people, interpreting, if you like, ideas and putting them more into a kind of a cultural context as well. There's been a real sense of kind of team building and community building that's come from the process.